You're not responsible. It was wrong. Reach out to me. We'll connect you.
I will never see, speak, or hear from Aaron Smith-Levin for the rest of my life.
I've been raised since the age of 4 to follow orders, do as I was told, or risk losing everything.
If we speak out, that's the only way they're going to get the strength to have the courage to do the same.
Why the hell someone have to escape to get out of a religion?
I'm still shocked by the evil. This is pure evil at work.
This is another extra Friday edition covering Scientology of Come Get Some. As I mentioned yesterday when promoting today's show, I don't know what it's like to be gay in today's America, but I imagine it's not very easy to begin with, just in society in general. But something I'm pretty sure of based on the text written by L. Ron Hubbard himself and things posted everywhere about what's within the doctrine of Scientology is it's not a very gay-friendly place. I wouldn't really trust the word of Laura Prepon. She's a actress on Orange is the New Black. She plays a lesbian. She's a paid TV lesbian who tells you that Scientology doesn't have a problem with homosexuality, and a lot of people in the gay and lesbian community look up to her as sort of a role model and as somebody to represent them, which is a shame because she's like a lot of other celebrities in that Scientology celebrity bubble. She's only really concerned with herself until proven otherwise. I do know it is okay, I suppose, to be gay or lesbian or bisexual or any other orientation in Scientology if you're willing to put up with the torture and torment of being convinced that you are nothing, dirt, and worthless, and you want to be convinced out of wanting to live. But don't listen to me on this. I don't understand it that much. Don't listen to Laura Prepon on it. She's not the authority on it. Don't listen to anybody but the people who can tell you what actually happens there, people who've actually been through it. Listen to Nora Crest in part 1 of my conversation about why you can't be gay in Scientology.
All right, so this person I have here today, I'm so happy to have because this is an important subject that hasn't been breached really heavily yet with all the exposure Scientology's had recently. If you've been on social media, you might have seen her video, Why You Can't Be Gay in Scientology. She's here with me today. It's Nora Crest. Welcome to the show, Nora.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm very happy to have you. Raging Buddha, as you go by on Twitter. Oh, wow.
I had to put a 1 in front of that because somebody else was already Raging Buddha and they never tweet. So that makes me angry. It makes me more raging.
It does. You know, Come Get Some was a Twitter account from like 3 years ago, and it has 2 tweets.
See? Isn't that annoying? Like, don't
pretty
think
mad.
it's cool and then don't use it, right?
I mean, yeah, exactly. Now, as of this recording, we just sat through a 2020 report last night. From Leah Remini was on there, and I couldn't tell, was she legitimately upset with the host? Do you think?
I think that was a little bit of like
a little tongue in cheek,
Brooklyn-esque joking around at the end. I don't think she's genuinely pissed off with Dan Harris because he's despite the fact that people like myself born into Scientology and who had to like literally escape, I felt he could have done a better job. But for people who don't know anything about Scientology, that was pretty telling interview that he did with the church's lawyer and with Leah. Also, but no, she definitely wasn't mad at him. I'm going to say that. Like, that was you saw her face at the end. She was laughing and joking around.
I was actually trying to live tweet, so I wasn't looking up. I didn't see it.
Oh, no, yeah. She was completely laugh. I was live tweeting also when it came on the, I had to wait for the West Coast feed. So people had already sent me their initial reactions from the show. And the only thing that didn't happen, I was interviewed for almost 2 hours for the show. And they didn't use any of it, and they didn't use any of it this morning on Good Morning America weekend. And that's fine. I mean, they have 2 hours of me in the can that they could just throw out at a random and there was a lot more they did with Serge. I mean, I know that they interviewed him for 4 hours on the same day that they interviewed me, and the amount of information about his story that came out, I'm going to say, is like 1%.
Of his story.
Of his story, which is a very harrowing, probably one of the worst stories I've ever heard, because the thing that's happening now with Leah's show that's so tremendously good is Going Clear. First, the book by Lawrence Wright really opened the floodgates kind of on people openly talking about Scientology. The media started talking about it, and without fear of repercussion. Because before, people just wouldn't do articles, they wouldn't do interviews about it, because the Scientology is just so happy that they just didn't want to deal with all that hullabaloo. And so when Going Clear came out, they really didn't have anything to sue over, because they literally gave Lawrence Wright thousands of documents that he used from Scientology itself to make the book. So they basically gave him the book. And then when the film came out, I thought it was really well done. But when I saw the screening of the film, I saw it before it hit HBO at LACMA here in Los Angeles. And both Lawrence Wright and Alex Gibney were at the screening, and they did a little Q&A after. And at the after party, I cornered both of them, and I said, okay, this is great, but where's my story? Like, not me specifically, but where are the thousands of second and third generation Scientologist stories? Not one second or third generation Scientologist was interviewed for either the book or the film. And Spanky Taylor just brushes on it so quickly in her story. Her baby's was covered with the flies and stuff, and then she runs away with her baby, which is great that her story has a happy ending. But there are literally thousands of us out here who grew up in Scientology and escaped from it, who had no childhood, no education, were abandoned by their parents at as young as 13 years old because they didn't want to be in the Sea Organization. And when you get kicked out of the Sea Organization, they give you $500 and say, good luck. And imagine being a 13, 16-year-old kid with $500 in your pocket with no family to turn to, and you're supposed to make it on your own, and you have no education. You don't even know how to apply for a job or what, it's really bad. These kids don't know anything. I mean, I know kids who were Scientology kids who started working the Sea Org as young as 12 years old. They signed the billion-year contract. That when they left, when they were adults, didn't know what the 3 branches of government were.
Because the education's not that strong.
Yeah. No, because what they do, 2 major things they do for kids, because they like to recruit children because they consider them to be pure. They haven't had time to accumulate crimes against themselves or humanity. And these crimes range from anything from masturbation, which is a crime, to actual crimes like stealing things or robbing someone or punching, assaulting someone or something like that. But because when you're a kid, you haven't had the years to accumulate bad things, you're a better candidate to mold into their Scientological dream person, which is basically a zombie robot. And when these kids get recruited, they're all told, oh, you're going to get an education, and you're going to have the best education, and you're going to get to train to become a Scientology auditor full-time, and all like dreams and rainbows and unicorns.
Exciting.
And then it turns into a nightmare, and you never get the jobs that they offered you when they were recruiting you, like never. And you end up in some menial task job.
But it's your fault.
Filing. What?
It's your fault you didn't get it. Is it though?
Oh, you're right, right, because you weren't really qualified, or somebody needs someone somewhere else in the organization, so you're a free body, so they just shove you over there. And what they like to do, because they skirt all of the laws, obviously, if you have children working for you, there are very strict laws in this country on child labor in every state. And so they do one of 2 things. They either send you to a special school. There was one here in Los Angeles called Larry Dennison's Academy. And this guy literally just gave you the GED test over and over and over until you got it all right, and just helped you learn the answers to the GED test. So you can go in and sit down and robotically repeat all of the correct answers for the GED, and then get a GED, so then therefore you could become an emancipated minor, and you're done with school, so you don't have to follow those labor laws. You can be 13 and work 15 hours a day. Or the other option is to get these kids married. Now, a lot of times, children were marrying children. Like my ex-husband, his first wife, because he joined when he was 12, he got married at 14 to, I believe, maybe she was 15 or 16, but they were both teenagers and they got married. And what happens when children get married is then legally they become an emancipated minor. So then you don't even have to get the GED because now you can just work full time because you're considered legally an adult once you're married. But the gross thing that happens is when the children aren't marrying each other and you have, I can't even, it's too many to count instances of 25 to 35-year-old men marrying 15, 16-year-old girls, which is totally okay in the church because the church looks at children as immortal spiritual beings in a teeny tiny body. So you're really a bajillion years old person. It doesn't matter that your body is 8. You can work. You can get married when you're 15 because that's totally normal,
So this is before I ask you some questions on just this portion of what you've been saying. One good thing about me versus Dan Harry is he's required to exhibit some level of journalistic integrity. So I can have an opinion. Wow. So I think a couple things came out of what you just said there that maybe it jumped out at me. One of those things, I'm almost forgetting the first thing that came up, but the most recent thing you were talking about was the whole age difference and the little people is, it actually goes together with what you said before was that younger people are easier to brainwash, basically. And but the thing is, because they're pure, because they're clean, but the truth is, based on Serge's story last night, which I think is good that his story got covered because, I don't want it to be at your expense, but people are hearing your story.
I would have been 100% okay if they cut everything of mine and they just went and just did Serge's story for an hour. I would have been totally fine with that.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about his story is it's eye-opening because basically what you learn from this is not only are you wrong for being gay in your case, but just in general, an innocent child walking in, oh, I'm 7 or I'm 10, I haven't done anything. No. Reach back. You did something sometime in the last 2 centuries. You did something.
I mean, you have to. That's the ridiculousness of it because when you get into the past life scenario, it is. I mean, obviously, when you're doing it, you believe it because you've been indoctrinated since birth that you are reincarnated. So you've lived before. As a Scientology kid, that is a 100% certainty in your life that you are not just whomever you're being this lifetime. You have existed for millions of lifetimes. And so you already know that as a kid. So thinking about past life is like, oh yeah, of course. Let's talk about my past life. Let's talk about when I was a cowboy in the 1850s riding on a ranch.
Right.
It's normal to you. In the same way that a Christian, it's normal that they're staring at Jesus on a cross with the crucifixion and the blood and I'm going to go take communion. Let me drink Jesus' blood and eat his flesh, and this is normal. I remember the first time I went, my grandmothers were both Christian. One was Seventh-day Adventist and the other one was Episcopalian. And the first time they made me take communion, even though I wasn't baptized, but the first time the priest, the minister says to me, the body of Christ, the blood of Christ, I was like, excuse me, what now? What's happening? That freaked me out.
Well, it's symbolic, but yeah, I get it.
Yeah, I know it's symbolic, but they didn't say to me, this is the symbolic blood of Christ.
Right.
Here's the blood of Christ, and they're shoving wine down my throat. I was like, what is happening? And I got it explained to me later, but, every religion, and I hesitate to say this because this is the number one thing that pisses me off when people are like, well, Scientology is just as crazy as every other religion. No. Yes and no. Yes, every religion has in it aspects that if you look at it from a scientific and logical viewpoint, obviously these things are kind of ridiculous and fantastical. But the difference, I want to say, between Catholicism as it exists right now, not, the Inquisition days, okay? But as Catholicism exists today versus Scientology today, Catholicism is not kidnapping people, is not recruiting children to become priests and take confessions from people,
and then use them.
And yeah, you know what I mean? It's like, and you sit down in a Catholic church and you confess something to the priest. He's like, all right, go do 5 Hail Marys. See you later. Like, he's not keeping notes. He's not recording it.
Right.
He's not gonna be like, oh, you just confessed this last week, buddy. I'm gonna play it back for you. No, that's it. Move on. Move forward with your life. And that's the difference. In Scientology, you're sort of like, you become like Jacob Marley in the Scrooge story, like carrying those chains of all of your past misdeeds around, because you never forget them. Even though Scientology claims it erases the energy connected with bad incidents and things like that, what ends up happening is the complete opposite. Instead of erasing these things and being free from them, misdeeds you did or whatever, you're carrying that around with you because everybody in the church knows what you did because they all talk about it, even though they're not supposed to.
Right.
So you actually become worse because now everything you do, you're thinking about, oh shit, like last week in session, I just talked about stealing candy bars, and now I just stole another fucking candy bar, and I'm like a terrible person. And so you actually never move forward. You only become worse. So that's the real lie about Scientology. And I'm not saying, I don't know if people get better with Catholicism. I've known a lot of Catholics. They seem like super decent people to me. So, that's from experience, they're pretty nice people.
Yeah.
Scientologists, not so much.
Yeah, that's interesting you say that because there's different levels. There's, I always said that there's 2 kinds of people that scare me more than anything else, and that's religious fanatics and atheists. And, there's no. I like that happy medium of maybe there's something there, but I'm not going to force anything on you. I think the creepiest thing I ever experienced in my life is Jesus Christ. If you accepted Jesus Christ as your personal savior, and I'm like, no, man, he saved everybody. I'm not selfish. It was more of a more all-inclusive thing. That's not my.
Religious fanatics of any ilk are basically the same. Because they're the only ones that have an answer, and everyone else is wrong. And if you don't do their solution, you're going to die a terrible, horrible death that, you don't want to die from. And that's the common denominator in all fanatics. Whether they're Muslim, Christian, Scientologists, the only people who don't have things like that, honestly, are Buddhists and Taoists. Like, there's no, hellfire for
Right.
So you're a bad person. Okay, well, move on.
Right? Well, I think...
There's no, thing. I mean, in Buddhism, it's like you're doing what you're doing, and you're supposed to just be there in the moment. And so if you're in a moment that you're doing bad shit, maybe you should look at that and go, hey, I'm doing bad shit. I should stop that. And that's Buddhism, in a nutshell.
Right? Well,
Scientology, where you're in your head, and that's the real insidiousness of Scientology, is that in the same way that I think some Christian religious fanatics just basically insert the entire Bible into their mind, and so everything that they do is they have to be doing what the Bible says,
Right.
And so they get really, really ridiculous at stuff. It's the same thing with Scientology. They literally cannot make a decision without going through multiple things in their minds, Scientologically, to figure out what is the best scenario. So they're never thinking for themselves. They're always thinking as Scientology would have them think.
Yeah, and looking back last night at 2020, a lot of people complained that they thought that Monique Yingling was avoiding and lying, which she clearly was. But I felt like in a way, some of her answers, because there is no defense of some of these things, she kind of buried it on her own a little bit.
Well, my favorite thing that she said was when Dan Harris pointed out the motto, essentially, of CCHR, Citizens Commission on Human Rights, that is the Scientology front group, that psychiatry is the industry of death. I mean, it's literally like the title of their museum. Psychiatry, the industry of death. And she's like, well, that's more of a catchphrase. And she's like, but they're saying it's an industry of death. Like, how is that a catchphrase? Like,
right?
I mean, if I were Dan Harris, I would have said to her, okay, Monique, you've been defending the church now for how long? 25, 27 years? Great. And, you're telling me how great it is. How come you've never been a member? How come your kids aren't in the Sea Org?
I was thinking that last night.
right? I mean, like, there's so many good questions that I know it could be considered tongue-in-cheek and, you know, a little sarcastic, but you know what? That lady's sitting there blatantly, in some respects, lying because what she's saying about, you know, disputing things on the Johannesburg spec check and stuff, those are lies because they're not true, but she's actually not lying because she doesn't know.
But she's saying she knows. She's saying she knows.
Yes, she's because she's been told.
Right, she's been told. That's very that can be used in court, right? I've been told.
My aunt, who is in the legal world profession, she was like screaming at her TV, like, "You're an officer of the court. Like, what are you doing? Like, you can't, you know, you just can't. Being a lawyer is a serious job. It's not, you know, I mean, it's similar to the medical profession where you do take an oath to uphold the laws and, you know, to the best of your ability. And this woman is just sitting there looking like a lump of clay that's been reheated in a microwave, and, you know, just like, well, you know, I've been told this, and these people are all liars, and all of them are making money. And that's the number one thing that the church likes to say, that anyone who speaks out is a paid professional apostate. It's like, okay, if that's true, I will right now give my address out so that this check that I'm supposed to be getting can come to me because I could use it. Like, this is serious people who are supposedly paying people like me to speak out. Please tell me where to sign up. I will send you my info because, yeah, you know, this is not a money-making thing. I make $0 from, you know, putting videos out on the internet or even doing this interview with you. I mean, you're not paying me any money. So this is a passion project because of what I went through growing up in Scientology and working for them in the Sea organization and getting sent to basically their concentration camp, the Rehabilitation Project Force. And people have to know, and I'm frustrated last night that this didn't get covered. I mean, I talked about the RPS for like a second.
Sure, yeah.
But in my interview, I was interviewed on the other side of the big blue building, and I was pointing out to them, here's where the RPS sleeps, here's where they do this, here's where this, I mean, I was showing them, like, on the building, like, literally, why don't you call the fire department and get, like, them to come in here right now and let's see the conditions.
Wow.
I promise you, they could condemn that whole place.
Do you think...
The problem is, what?
I'm sorry.
The problem with that is that they, you know, when the inspection's going to come, because we had them, they know ahead of time because they have people within the fire department and the police department, especially in Los Angeles and in Clearwater, that they have made big donations to. They make a point of getting on the police activities league in their local area, and so they will get a heads up from their friendly neighborhood officer. Oh, you guys are going to have an inspection tomorrow. You know, might want to make sure everything's ship shape, kind of a thing. And if somebody wanted to do something, honestly, dear FBI, I don't know what they're doing, not doing something, but if the FBI got together with, like, Los Angeles, you know, the chief here, Charlie Beck, and the captain of the fire department, if they got a warrant, and I promise you this, if they got a warrant and simultaneously walked into the blue buildings there on Allen Hubbard Way and Celebrity Center International and just said, first of all, I want to see every single person that works here. I want to see their IDs right now. And they would find that they have children working there illegally. They have people whose R1 visas who are expired, who are basically been human trafficked because they're not allowed to go back to their home country, and they're just working completely illegally. The living conditions will be filled with cockroaches and bad water and bad food, and it will be like walking into a third world, essentially, where people have so little possessions, they don't know anything of the outside world. And Mike Rinder has said this before, like, well, what if the FBI raided, you know, the int base and just set it right free? Those people are so scared of David Miscavige and the possible consequences, they would all say, oh, I love it here, it's great. And that's why you have to ignore what people are saying and just go by the evidence. Look at their ID. Contact their parents, contact their family and say, is this your daughter? What is she doing here? You know, and find out, because there are people who their family members haven't seen them for years. They don't even know where they are, you know, and it has to be shut down because it's not a religion. It's not a religion. It's a cult, and everybody hates that word. But it is a mind control brainwash cult that is literally engaging in human trafficking, pedophilia, you know, all these things get swept under the rug. I mean, I can tell you right now 3 cases that I know, just because I brought up pedophilia, of statutory rape that happened that were never reported to the police because the church takes the rapist and gives them confessionals and makes them do an amends project to the church, and then takes the victims, who are 99% of the time girls, and says you're a whore slut who seduced this 50-year-old man even though you're 14. Yep. And you're a terrible human and you need to go away. And then they rehabilitate the disgusting pedophile statutory rapist and put him back in a position of power within the church, where he's then again around young people and can strike again, and often do. And it is so rampant. Like Serge was starting to touch on that last night when he was talking about how children are trained to do these confessionals with adults. It is child abuse. They're putting kids in the position of being a therapist for adults. I mean, imagine you've just now paid, I think the price now is up to $3,100 per hour to get this therapy from Scientology. So just imagine you've just paid for 5 hours of therapy. Okay, this is like $15,500. And you walk into this room that you've paid $15,000 to be in, and there's a 14-year-old kid there who's going to now ask you about the most private thoughts in your mind, and ask it repeatedly over and over and over until you give the nitty-gritty details of everything in your life.
Yeah.
Like, that's just insane. It's insane, but it's not illegal because they skirt all these laws, and this kid is probably married, and, so they're an emancipated minor, so it's not illegal. There's nothing, as far as I know, any law anywhere that says a 14-year-old can't be a therapist.
But they can be married?
They should be, but...
There's a law that a 14-year-old can be married?
As long as you have your parents' permission. I think there's only a couple states that you can't get married as a minor in.
So
in California,
bizarre.
as long as your parents sign on the dotted line, you can get married.
So as long as your parents are idiots. Wow. Oh, God. Well, let me backtrack a little bit, because you're covering a lot of ground. You're covering a lot of ground. It's all great.
I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. You're fine. Do you think 2020 bent over backwards to try to look like they were being fair? Do you think that's part of the problem with last night's report?
Partially, because the church so rarely allows a spokesperson on camera now. So they just, they were just peeing their pants that, the lawyer was going to come on and talk something. So quite literally at the last second, they sent Monique Yingling in, she's their golden boy who's going to, handle all of this mess for them. And as
not so much.
She was completely unprepared
to
answer any questions. She just kept saying, well, that's not true. And I've been told the exact opposite of that. And these things have never happened. It's just like, really? And I love that Jane Harris actually did a follow-up. So all of these people are lying?
Yeah.
Yes, they're all lying or exaggerating. And that was interesting. That should have been a follow-up, too. Oh, they're exaggerating. So some of this stuff happened?
Well,
which stuff did happen? Which part is being exaggerated? That was a really good follow-up.
Yeah.
He opened the door right there. It's like, in some ways, I don't know, maybe Dan Harris needs to watch more like Law and Order, because I would have thought of that follow-up on the spot. And
of course.
I'm not a professional journalist, but I watched a lot of Law and Order, and I've seen information on TV where if somebody opens up the door in their answer, you can ask leading questions at that point because they put it out there. They threw the bait out there. And she definitely did that in the interview last night. I also would have asked her, is she on something? Because what is happening with her face?
Something going on. She doesn't look right.
No, I mean, and it's like, I feel for her. As a woman, I'm not very good at putting on makeup. I'm not going to, I'm not a person. So when I saw her makeup, I was literally like, oh, sweetie, I can't believe the ABC people were like, we need to fix this. They just let her go on looking like she just rolled out of a bar and just sort of smashed her face Tammy Faye Baker style into a makeup kit and then just sat down. I mean, I guess in some ways I'm happy they did that, because now the world can just see, look at this woman. This is not a credible
Do you think
human.
she's just exhausted with this over 27 years and 30 years or so.
I don't think that the millions of dollars that she's made defending the church is exhausting.
Right. Yeah. I've always made that argument.
This is her cash cow. This is her cash cow, Scientology.
I've always
got multiple homes. You know, she's obviously put her kids into nice schools. She has nice things. I mean, you looked at her bag. She's got nice stuff. This is a great gig for her. Every once in a while, she's got to roll out of bed and say everyone's a liar, and then go to court and vehemently defend Scientology's right to be a religion when they're not a religion, and keep them. I mean, she was a key component in getting them their tax exempt status in the 90s, and if you watch Going Clear, obviously they go over the blackmail and other things that they were basically doing as a tactic against the IRS, and it's like, why? This is what's wrong with our government in general, and this is so off topic, but why didn't the IRS go to anyone else in the government? The FBI, the CIA, there wasn't Homeland Security then, but, and somebody would say, look at these crazy people. They are trying to take us down because we're saying they're not a church. Like, we should investigate the shit out of these guys.
Yep.
Had they done that, had they had some balls, they would have just investigated the hell out of Scientology and seen all the crazy shit that had been going on in the 80s. Scientology owed over $1 billion. $1 billion in back taxes, which was forgiven after they got the taxes. They retroactively forgave the past debt. And the truth of the matter is, as Mari Rassin laid out, if that had not happened and Scientology was forced to pay that, that's it. They would have been over. They wouldn't have been able to pay it.
Now those back taxes,
given over all their assets, and then they would have been defunct.
Those back taxes, they actually are part of the whole reason L. Ron Hubbard was on the run. Is that not correct?
Yes.
Yeah, he created that.
On the run in the 60s, which is why he formed the Sea organization in the first place. The story he gives Scientologists, and of course Sea members, is that he was studying the higher levels of Scientology. This required him to be, in the middle of the ocean so that he wasn't burdened by society's noise, so that he could clearly,
the IRS.
And really, he was not only was he running from the IRS, he owed taxes in England. They had kicked him out. Pretty much, one person to really talk to one time is Hannah Whitfield. She was in Going Clear, and I met her in Toronto in 2015 at a conference that I spoke at. And she's one of the best humans I've ever met in real life. But she worked with L. Ron Hubbard on the ship called the Apollo when he started the Sea Organization. And the stories that she's got of that guy during that time period, I mean, it's just nuts, though. And the things they were doing, but they were literally being kicked out of every port that they stepped in. They were just making a terrible name for themselves all throughout the Mediterranean because people were like, you're not paying your fees, people were causing trouble in town, and L. Ron Hubbard was so, eccentric. He had a Jaguar. Was it a Jaguar? Anyway, some car
right.
Carried on one of the ships that had to be crane lifted, down onto the deck in the port so that he could drive around wherever they were. He had to have that and his little motorcycle and all these things. But yet the people working for him were getting paid nothing. They're eating beans and rice. They're living in squalor on these ships that are like rust buckets in the middle of the ocean that they're just patching up as they go along. And he's got motorcycles and cars and all these fancy clothes and fancy food. And it's the same thing for David Miscavige now. David Miscavige's suits, when you see him, those are like $5,000-$6,000 suits that he's wearing that are custom tailored for him. An average Sea Org member is lucky to get 3 uniform parts, like 3 shirts and maybe 2 pairs of pants that they have to use for ever. And on top of that, you're getting paid $35 to $50 a week when you're getting paid, and you have to pay for your own dry cleaning out of that.
Wow.
And everything else is personal for you. As a woman, you have to buy all your personal hygiene products. You have to buy your own shampoo, deodorant, razors, and then it's like you want a Coca-Cola to spice it up at lunch or whatever. You have to buy that too. And you have to, if you work at Celebrity Center, you got to pay full price at the there's no canteen for the crew members, so you got to go to the cafe and pay that $3 for that Coke. But everybody else does. I mean, it's so ridiculous. And now they've worded the contracts that people sign in such a way where one of the points that you sign off on is basically you're saying, I am a volunteer. I don't expect to be paid ever, and if I get paid, it's like a super bonus, and that's okay with me. I will never ask for back pay or become disgruntled about pay.
Yeah. Wow.
I mean, which is, I don't even know what company you could go to work for where that would even be legal to have you sign something like that.
No.
Like, can you imagine applying for a job at McDonald's and they're like, well, technically you're a volunteer at McDonald's, and if you get paid, that's just great. But if we just give you burgers, you have to accept that also. Like,
and the idea is, if you go to complain about it, if you go to police or anybody, you sign paperwork. You agree to this agreement. This is your right. This is your willingness to do this.
And you're signing. Also, additionally, they have you sign away on that same document your right to sue them for anything at any time ever.
Right, which I don't believe is enforceable, if I'm not mistaken.
I hope not, because that's just, you know, I'm not a student of the law, so I can't say, you know, for sure whether or not that's legal. But I hope that our system of laws, you know, would see that as something that's just too insane to agree to, and that, you know, like, no, you can't agree to that.
Yeah, I just wish I was making the money Tony Ortega was, based on what I saw on Twitter this morning. They were saying he's a bigot and a paid anti-Scientologist, and I was just like, does that make me a fool? Because for my efforts, I haven't made a dime. I don't think ill of Tony. I just wonder what I've done wrong that I'm not making any money yet. It's like, where can I cash it? You know what I mean? It's so silly. And I want to use.
I don't know anybody who's made a tremendous amount of money off of Scientology.
No.
I don't know how much Lawrence Wright got paid for his Pulitzer Prize winning book.
Right.
I'm sure he's a Pulitzer Prize author, so I'm sure whatever his going rate is per book, I'm sure he got that. I hope he got himself a sweet back end deal where he's getting some percentage of, you know, other stuff and the movie rights and things like that. But that's normal. I mean, that was like when Dan Harris brought that up to Leah. He's like, well, you know, you're getting paid as a producer. If I were Leah, and I thought she handled it pretty classily, I would have been like, Dan, you're a reporter. Are you getting paid right now to talk to me?
Right.
Oh, you have a job and you're doing it and you get paid? That's called America. Like, this is so stupid. Like, yes, she's a producer on a television show. Please raise your hand, producers of television shows who don't get paid to produce a television show. I'd like to meet that person. You know, I mean, that's
I never cared.
the dumbest thing ever.
I never cared if anyone made money. In fact, I hope people make money fighting Scientology. I mean, all that was taken from you guys during your time in there, you're entitled to some kind of retribution. You know, you're not going to get reparations. I mean, so you might as well, for your efforts, be compensated. I don't care if anyone makes money.
I agree with you. I mean, at one point, after you leave the Sea organization, no matter how long you've been in there, they send you a bill for all of the studies that you did.
The freeloader bill?
Okay. Yeah, your freeloader debt. And they itemize it out. They show you every course you ever did and every process you received and how much that cost and all this stuff. So you have this whole huge thing. And when I first left, I was very much like cowed to them still. And I didn't have a lot of money. I barely had a job. I was just really kind of trying to hold myself together. And so I agreed to pay $10 a month towards this bill, which was like $37,000, which of course would take me like 5 lifetimes to pay off at $10 a month.
Right.
But they were like, oh, good, you're flowing money. This is good. This is positive. And then one week, the person who had my debit card information, like, debited me like 4 times, like $40. And I was so broke at the time that overdrafted me. And so I got an alert from my bank, like, you're overdrafted. And, all this, like, now I'm a terrible person. And I'm thinking, oh, my God, like, the government's going to come get me. I overdrafted my account. Like, I'm just freaking out. So I contacted them, and I wrote a report on her and all this stuff, and she got in trouble. But then they contacted me and wanted my new debit card information. And I was like, you know what? I'll send you a check when I can. And then that was, like, sort of like the first thing that happened to me that sort of opened up the doors for me to start looking at things. And then I started getting really, like, bitter. Like, wait a minute. I owe you $37,000. Let's just think about this. Like, okay, what's minimum wage? In the 90s, it was like, what, $5.25 an hour or some bullshit.
Something like that.
And so I added up. I gave myself a work week. I was being generous of 80 hours and not charging any overtime for the weekends or anything. And so I calculated it out, like, $5.25 at the 5 years that I spent at Celebrity Center. And then I even docked my pay by half for the almost 3 years I spent on the RPS, because when you get on the RPS, you go to quarter pay. So if you're getting paid $50 a week, you go down to $11.25 a week.
You're working harder.
Taxes have been taken out per week. You get $11.25 while you're working 10 to 15 hours a day doing manual labor. Yeah, it's incredibly disgusting. So I calculated all this out, how much money they had paid me, how much money all the courses had cost, and then how much it cost to birth me every night, because the building that they owned has now been turned into a restaurant and hotel that I lived in. It was called the Wilcox at the time. But it cost 10 cents a night to birth people there, because you had between 8 and 10 people per room, 6 to 10 people, because depending on the size of the room. And because they owned it, it was so cheap, because they bought it in the 70s, it really cost them nothing. It was literally 10 cents a night, because you had 300 people living there and packed in these rooms like sardines and stuff. So I calculated all this out, and then versus what I would have made had they been paying me minimum wage for all those hours. And I was like, actually, you guys owe me like $25,000. So if you want to like send that in a check, or I could just pick it up out of your petty cash. And I literally like sent them this letter, and that was sort of the start of me getting deemed suppressive, because I had the balls to say, I think you actually owe me money, which they did not like.
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna ask you how far you got up the bridge, but I think it's pretty clear that you didn't go up the bridge.
Oh no, I did.
Oh, you did?
I was a unicorn in Scientology.
A unicorn?
Yeah. When I was a kid, when I was 13, I started doing courses with my mom. We were working together in the course room, and we did method 1, which is a word. It's like they put you on the e-meter, and they rattle off a list of subjects to you, like science, math, blah, 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 all these things. And if you get a reaction on the e-meter, you're trying to find all the words you don't understand in that subject. And the goal of this process is that now you will have complete understanding on all subjects at all times, even though you haven't studied them. Magically, you know about it. And then the course you usually do right after that is called the Student Hack, which is a course designed to teach you the study techniques of Scientology and to teach you how to be a student. Okay? So while I was on the Student Hack, I got offered some free processing, because a student auditor needed somebody to do this processing on. And I was like, oh, this sounds great. So we were doing it. The process is called the objective processes, but now it's called the survival rundown. But anyway, they just like to rebrand things constantly nowadays. And during these processes, I had the realization that I was clear, which of course is the goal of Dianetics, which was the first book that L. Ron Hubbard wrote, sort of started the whole thing off. And a clear in that book is defined as an individual who no longer has his own reactive mind. And the reactive mind is like where, according to L. Ron Hubbard, all traumatic and bad incidents are stored, and then they react upon you when you least expect it. Like the example they give most commonly, like, as a kid, if you got bit by a dog, and then then later as an adult, if you see a similar dog, you would get like a pain in your arm where you got bit, because your reactive mind is reacting upon you, telling you, oh, dog, watch out, you're going to get bit. So you get rid of that mind, that portion of your mind that is reactionary and not logical. So I had this realization. I told the people. They got very excited. And at the time, I was in San Francisco at the San Francisco organization there. And because of things that I was saying, they had to send me to Los Angeles to the advanced organization. It's literally called Advanced Organization Los Angeles. And so they sent me there, and through various processes, it was verified that I was a last lifetime clear. So now I was basically a unicorn. I was what they like to call a recome backer. So that means that in my past life, in my immediate previous life, I was a Scientologist, and I had achieved the state of clear. And I was 14 at the time. And I would think I was like one of maybe 3 children on the entire planet who had been verified as a last lifetime clear. So for me, this was sort of a death sentence in Scientology, which I had no destiny at that point other than to become a Sea Org member, because, of course, being a last lifetime Scientologist, I know how important Scientology Scientology is, and obviously I've only come back to rejoin the ranks of people and to, clear the planet.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was actually like the worst thing that could have possibly happened to me.
Can I ask you,
Scientologically?
isn't when they find out that you're gay, does that not contradict the comebacker theory?
Well, see, this was the big problem because when you're clear, you're not supposed to have any aberrations.
Mm-hmm.
Hang on with it. You're supposed to be, you're not supposed to have any reactive mind. And of course, being gay is perverted and wrong. So you shouldn't even be able to be clear and be gay.
Exactly. So it's a
So
flaw.
what happened when I was on the RPF? They called into question my clear status, of course, because
Right.
I must need more Dianetic processing to get rid of this terrible, terrible gayness. But when they re-verified it, surprise, it still got verified by their standards. So, yeah, they were kind of up Schitt's Creek at that point. And so I was an anomaly. Like, how can you be gay and be clear? And basically what happens, even if you do go clear nowadays and you're gay, you just won't go any farther. You will never get onto the upper levels, to the operating Satan levels. You will not be allowed to know the secret data that is all over the internet for anyone to find.
I'm still waiting to get sick from reading that stuff.
Right, you're going to die. You're basically going to die. You're going to get pneumonia and die. That's basically what you're told. So your whole body will explode if you know this data. And that's terrifying as a child because that's a certainty to you. I mean, when the article came out, the Time article in 1990, or was it 90 or 91? Anyway, one of those years. The Time article that came out with the octopus coming out of the volcano, the cult of greed, that whole thing. I was in high school when that happened. And for whatever dumb reason, not really dumb, I mean, I was, a Scientologist through and through, and I really believed that I was superior to these kids that I was in high school with because they weren't Scientologists and they didn't know the secrets of the universe. And I went to regular school. I didn't go to special Scientology, I didn't go to Scientology school. So of course I was superior to all these people because I'm a last lifetime clear and they're just, poor wogs who don't know anything about the universe and I know everything. I mean, it's really an ego trip and it's a terrible thing to give someone who's in the middle of puberty this grandiose idea of themselves.
Well, because only Scientology can solve all these problems.
That's right. So
you got the in.
Yeah, you have all the data. A friend told me about that article. He really did. He wasn't my friend. He hated me. But he was like, "Hey, did you know your religion made the cover of Time?" I was like, "What? Oh, that's amazing. I'm gonna go check that out." So I went to the library, and then I see the cover, and I was like, "Oh my God!" I stole it. I stole it from the library. I have never stolen anything in my life, and I was like running for my life with this disgusting magazine that I didn't want anybody else to read. And of course, I locked myself in a bathroom stall and read the whole article, and then I knew I'm going to get pneumonia now and die. That's it. My life is over. And I called my father and my godfather, who were both on the upper OT levels, first my godfather's reaction was just to laugh at me. "Oh, that's ridiculous. Why would you even think that's true?" So Scientologists are trained to lie when they're confronted with the actual data from the OT levels. You are drilled to just go, "That's ridiculous." Even though they're reading it to you, word for word.
It's a reaction. It's like a reflex.
Exactly. But my father's reaction was his typical reaction, which as soon as I said it to him, he goes, "Well, does that remind you of anything? Do you recall being told that before?" And this was really the problem for me growing up. My mother very much was like, "You can choose Scientology or not. I don't care. Whatever you want to do, you can do it. But Scientology has to be your choice. You have to decide you want to do it." My father, on the other hand, they got divorced when I was 8. So when I would go visit my dad living in LA, he would literally take me to Scientology recruiters and just pimp me out. He'd be like, "Hey, this is my daughter Nora. She's 11. She's smart. What do you got for her?"
Wow.
And then we'd sit there for hours while these people would hammer into me, and he'd be like, "Doesn't that sound great? Do you want to do that?" And being a girl with typical daddy issues, of course I wanted to please my father. And of course my mom was just rude and a bitch, and she didn't know what she was talking about, and she's just stopping me from saving the whole planet. What an asshole.
Right.
I mean, it it really complicated things. And then on top of that, getting declared a last lifetime clear, and then existing in high school as the sole Scientologist in a school full of kids who were like, I like you, but this is crazy. Like, you do know that this is a cult, right? Like, I don't know why you're in it and you can't see it. I mean, and stupidly telling people, yeah, I'm a Scientologist. Like, I don't, oh my goodness. It's already hard enough to be in high school, and then doing that to yourself.
You were proud at the time.
Yeah, I was completely proud of it. In a very peacocking way, for about the first 2 years of high school. And then my junior year, I did not wear my clear bracelet or my I had a little Scientology pendant. I stopped wearing that. I just was like, you know what? I'm just gonna do high school right now. Like, I don't care. And then every time I would visit my dad, I would get talked into signing the billion-year contract. And then they would call my mom, who had legal custody of me, and she'd be like, so fuck yourself. You're not, no, I'm not signing it. No. And then she would get really mad, and we'd have a fight about it, and then I'd have to like, oh, I'm sorry. And, it just was like this never-ending routine. So when I moved to Los Angeles at 18 after I graduated, because I was offered a really, really great job at a Scientology school teaching PE at the age of 18 with no teaching credential, no experience teaching, but hey, I have a tracksuit and a whistle. That's all I need, right? Like, I'm ready to go.
Were you athletic?
I was I lettered in 3 sports.
Oh wow.
Basketball, softball, and tennis. I've been playing basketball since I was 7.
Nice.
I don't look athletic now. That's what happens when you herniate 2 discs and break 3 ribs and almost die by electrocution in the RPF, and then have 2 children. Working my way back to fitness. And it's been a really long run.
Well, we can't go off past that. You say we electroshock transformation therapy type of thing?
Oh, no. I didn't get electroshock therapy. I was shocked I got electrocuted. It was an accident.
Okay.
Voltage electrocuted. No. There's no shock therapy in Scientology, but on the RPF, I was physically abused. I have, the medical records and other things to prove it, but 3 broken ribs, 2 herniated discs, getting electrocuted. I spent a summer almost bleeding to death. When I left, I was not only broken mentally, I was very much broken physically as well.
Wow.
And it's taken 14 years, almost 15 now, to basically recover physically and mentally from that. And I'm still in the process of recovery. I'm not 100% recovered, by any stretch of the imagination. But I'm also not as broken as I was 15 years ago when I left. So.
And even though they're hurting you physically, and they are basically, I say they stripped you of your identity, which they do. You don't have to be gay for this to happen. They strip everybody of their identity. You become the Scientology Stepford wife type of thing. But it's deeper for you, for your situation.
Well, because you're all immersed. Your family's in it, and you do believe 100% that you are going to lose your eternity, and that's terrifying. But more terrifying than that is really the thought of losing your family, the thought of losing my mother. My father died when I was 19. Just like I want to say 9 months after I joined the Sea Org. He passed away of a massive heart attack.
Sorry.
So I'd already lost my father, and now after working for 5 years, I got sent to the RPF. And then it was like, a constant, like, well, you're going to get declared suppressive and your mom's never going to talk to you again. And even though in the back of my mind I knew my mom would never choose Scientology over me, there was like a 1% of me that thought, but what if she does?
So it happens.
What if she does?
It does happen.
Listen, I am so lucky. I am so fortunate to have the mother that I have, who, when I left the Sea Organization, I didn't tell her how I had left, which is super dramatic. I just said, oh yeah, I finally left. She came home, and I was just sitting on the couch, and she's like, what are you doing here? And I said, well, I'm home now. And she's like, are you home, or are you home? Which meant, because I had run away a few times to her house, and then, of course, we had to go back, and, otherwise security shows up and tries to break the door down to physically take you back. So I decided to go back voluntarily so that nobody was being assaulted in my parents' house. So when she asked that, I said, no, I'm home. And she ran to me and like scooped me up, and we were both crying, and she was like, I'm so happy that you're back. Like I can't imagine having a parent who'd be like, oh, you left a Fjord, you're dead to me. Like I can't, and I know people who that happened to, you know, and I'm so fortunate that I have the mom that I did, and that even despite the fact that she was still very much heavily involved with the church at the time, she was working for Narconon, and she was studying full-time Scientology. She allowed me to live in her house. She did not we talked about Scientology for like one time, and I said, you know what, I can't do it anymore. And this is also before I told her everything that happened. I was just like, it's just not for me. Like I just can't do it. And she was like, okay, you know, that makes me sad that you're not going to do it, but I respect that. You know, and that, again, even that got my mom in trouble. Like, why aren't you getting her to pay her freeloader debt? And I was like, that's bullshit anyway. You know, she's a hippie from San Francisco, so she was already on the fringes of Scientology. You know, they're like, oh, this lady's crazy. You know, because she didn't fit the mold of a typical Scientologist. You know, she's a Democrat, which is also kind of a no-no in Scientology. Most Scientologists are staunch Republicans. And even though, you know, you're not supposed to tell people who to vote for, they tell you who to vote for. You know, and that was big waves. The first election I voted in was Clinton in '96, and I was like so proud that I had voted for Bill Clinton. I got in trouble.
Oh wow.
I mean, even despite the fact that Bill Clinton as president is the only president to ever stuck up for Scientology at all, and Madeleine Albright did her whole speech to Germany like, you can't treat these people like this, they still hate him. And they hated Hillary. They worked really hard against her in the election.
I can imagine. I imagine Donald Trump reminds a lot of people in Scientology of their leader. You know,
100%.
Like he's very L. Ron Hubbard-ish.
He's complete. Well, he's like L. Ron Hubbard without the big fancy words.
Which those words, by the way, and I don't want to offend anyone, upset anyone, because you know. I was talking to Kathy, you know Kathy Schenkelberg, and she put that note up, that letter from her, I guess her daughter's godmother, that said that it was disconnecting, and said that she interpolated her, and that's not a word. And I was saying that, and I realized after I got off the phone with Kathy that Kathy seemed surprised or confused by my like, oh yeah, interpolate, like, oh my God, I kind of inadvertently laughed at Kathy because. To Kathy, maybe that's still a word, you know, and you hear the selfness and
its own language.
Yeah, it's not even it's ridiculous, but you can't just forget it. You can't just it doesn't just go away.
No, and it is a process. I mean, part of recovering fully from Scientology, in my opinion, and this is validated in a few people's books, Steve Hassan. And his Freedom of Mind Institute, or his group that he runs, you know, he's a cult expert, and John Atack has written a book, A Piece of Blue Sky, that talks about this also. But part of recovering from any cult, whether it's Scientology or the Moonies or whatever, is stripping yourself of the nomenclature. And that's one thing that's so hard when you are not associating with Scientologists anymore and you're working in the real world. You cannot talk like you talk to Scientologists. Like, for example, if I'm a manager and somebody's not getting something done fast enough, and I've been waiting for it, and I'm pissed off. In the real world, I would say, listen, you were supposed to get this done by 3 o'clock. I don't know what you're complaining about. You've had 2 days to get this done. You need to get it done right now, or else, I'm going to have to find somebody else to do it, and this is, we're going to have to go to HR and review your status here. Like, that conversation makes sense, right? Like, it's clear what's happening. Okay, so if I'm a Scientologist and I'm communicating the same message to somebody, I say, listen, knock off your fucking HE&R on post, and this is total dev T now for me, because this is, you're off target. Okay? So that's it, man. You're in danger.
What the hell are you talking about, right?
If a Scientologist just listened to what I said, they know exactly what I said. Everyone else is going, what is that gobbledygook coming out of this woman's mouth? HE&R is short. Is Scientology loves acronyms. Okay, they got an acronym for everything. They got an acronym for acronyms. But H&R stands for Human Emotion and Reaction, and this is actually the most key acronym used in Scientology, because in Scientology, human emotion and reaction. If you think about that, like someone tells you, "Oh, I'm sorry, your father passed away," and you bawl your eyes out. That is considered H&R. It's considered a negative reaction. Like, yes, have some grief, but, don't stay in it too long, because that's dead T, which is developed traffic, which means your work is piling up. You're not flowing through your work and getting it completed fast enough. So that phrase, H&R, is used a lot to get people to stop having emotions in a moment. So if you're getting angry because someone's screaming in your face, that's H&R. If you are upset because you've been asked to stay up all night until you sell 50 books, that's H&R. If you become disillusioned with Scientology because they put you in a concentration camp because you're gay, that's H&R. So everything that isn't you shutting up and doing what they've told you to do is H&R, and it's a bad thing.
Wow.
So you get these things hammered into you where you're not allowed to have emotions, you're not allowed to not get things done to full completion on an immediate basis. So you become frantic all the time. I mean, when I took my first job after leaving, and I'll never forget, after I'd been there like a week, I was sitting at my desk eating lunch, and I was working at basically like a call-in center, and I was still taking calls while I was eating lunch. And I'm in the middle of a call, and my supervisor comes over and says, like, "I need to see you when you're done with this call." I'm like, "Okay." So I wrap up the call, and I'm shoveling food in my mouth, and I walk over to her desk, and she's like, "Listen, you need to clock out for lunch." And I was like, "Oh, no, I'm good. I'm good. I'm almost done, and I'm fine. I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have taken like all those bites. Like, I'll just keep working." And she's like, "No, you have to clock out." I'm like, "Oh, no, I really don't." She's like, "No, like legally, you have to clock out. You have to take a lunch hour, or we could be sued." And I'm like, "What? Wait, I could sue you if you don't give me lunch? Like, what?"
Yeah, this is not the world you know.
No. I mean, she was looking at me like I was an alien.
Right.
Because I was literally like inhaling food. I was taking 5 minutes maybe to eat like an entire meal. And then, sitting and continuing to work. Like, people looked at me like, "You're a freak," and I was like, "I'm sorry you don't have the worst ethic that I do, but I'm here to get shit done."
There's that mentality, yep.
It's very hard to leave. I mean, I still, when I go out with friends or I go out with my family, it takes effort for me to not, like, prison style eat my food, like literally throw my left arm in front of my plate and just shovel things in my mouth as fast as I can, because that's the franticness that you get, especially when you're on the RPF. You have 20 minutes for your meal. 20 minutes, which includes standing in line with hundreds of people to get the food and fighting for it, and then sitting down and shoveling it in your face before it's time to go back to work. So you don't, it's, I have to say to myself on my mind, like, enjoy it.
Right.
Enjoy the food.
Savor.
Taste the flavors. Take your time. It's, you have as much time as you want to eat this meal. And it's like weird things like that stick with you, because it becomes just part of you. And that's part of recovering from it. Part of recovering from Scientology is getting rid of these words that are gobbledygook, that mean nothing, and really learning to speak like a human again, and interacting with people, and really just, the other thing that I've been working on that I really kind of cracked open this year in therapy, which was terrifying to go to, was expressing my own emotions as I'm having them, instead of bottling it up and then, exploding later over something stupid that has nothing to do with why I'm upset. So actually just being able to feel things.
Being human.
Wow, being a human being, you have to relearn that. And it's, it's a daunting process. I mean, as most people know, obviously I'm gay. We've said that like 25 times now.
Are you?
And what?
Can I ask you what oh man, what am I thinking?
But, when I left the Sea Org, my family, once again, was tremendously amazing. They're like, "So you're gay? Great. Go date girls. Have a good time." Like, that was their attitude. Literally, that's what my godfather said to me. Like, he threw like a welcome home party for me. He's like, "So you're lesbian now? Great." What?
All right, but it doesn't end there. There's a whole lot more to cover, plus 10 questions with Nora Crest. coming up next Friday on another extra special edition of the Scientology coverage on Come Get Some. Stay connected, and that about sums it up. You guys have a great week. I'll talk to you later.
Hey, this is Chris. Thank you for checking out the YouTube version of one of my audio interviews. If you'd like to see more, leave in the comments which ones you'd like to see next. Believe it or not, this is not a cash-generating venture for me. I do this on my own, and it's a lot more work than it looks. So please show me that you appreciate the fruits of my labor by hitting that like button and subscribe and sharing with as many people as possible. That, in turn, will inspire and encourage me to do more faster and get it out there for you here on this YouTube channel. Otherwise, as usual, stay connected. And that about sums it up.